Hello everybody, my name is Michael, and today's video is going to deal with a viewpoint character from the story of Entropy, and that is Mordecai. You can say Mordecai is the story because everything, or most everything we see and hear comes from him. We see it through him. We experience it through him. So he's very important to the story. Now, there are other main characters that we will see their point of view, but they're not as much as Mordecai's. So even though we get to know a lot about Mordecai as the story evolves, there's some things that I simply don't touch upon in the story because I either don't see them as important, or they might be a distraction, or they're irrelevant. So I like to go over some of that backstory that I have developed for him that we probably will never get to, or we will never really find out any concrete information on, other than maybe just it's a sentence on a page in chapter 20 of book 15 or something. So let's go over those details now so you get an idea of who we're dealing with. And when we get to him, and when we get to those parts, or we get to a story with him, because like I said, August 18th, I do plan on releasing the first actual story. So let's take a look at some of these things. One thing I will get, and I've gotten it from friends and family, is exactly what does Mordecai look like? What race is he? What ethnicity is he? What nationality is he? What color is his hair? What color are his eyes? What color is his skin? That sort of thing. How tall he is. What is his base build? That sort of thing. Well, I could tell you some of those things, and other of those I can't tell you because I've never really thought about him. And if I have, it's been in context that I've put him in. And I don't really want to do that to you guys. I don't want to give you an image already that I've envisioned for Mordecai, because Mordecai is basically whoever you want him to be when it comes to looks wise. So, in the story, I will describe him. He's a little bit, taller than 6 foot. He's about 180 pounds. He's got short hair, and he's got a, pretty, I don't know if it's not a muscular build, but it's not athletic either. It's not a dad bod or anything like that. He's well built. Let's just put it that way. And that's all that's all I ever really say about Mordecai in the story and how he looks, because I want you to, place him. I want you to be him when you read the story. So whoever you are, whatever you look like, that's what Mordecai looks like, essentially. So if you have any questions or comments, like maybe I'm oversimplifying it, maybe I should define more about him, let me know. I'm a very open person. I am more than willing to answer questions, or describe or explain better why I think this way, or why I want him to be that way. Anyway, so the next question I often get is, how old is Mordecai? Because when we start out the story, when we first meet him in the first chapter, he claims to be almost 20,000 years old. Now, is that true? Well, we don't know. He believes it is. So, and he gives Imogen no reason to doubt that he is at least that old. But he is older than that. I don't know how much older. I mean, let me rephrase that. I do know how much older he is, but it's part of the story, and I don't want to spoil that for you. So I will say this. It's an age-related thing. Like, people who are older, like I said, I'm 44 years old. And the one thing I've noticed as I've gotten older, things of 10, 15, 20 years ago, they all start kind of merging together, like the years, the days, the weeks, they all start merging together. And a good example of that, I can tell you a lot of what I did last week, but I couldn't exactly tell you which day it was or what time of the day it was. I could say, like, well, maybe I ate a ham sandwich for lunch last week, but which day it was, if I had to take a guess, it was probably Wednesday, might have been Thursday. That's what I mean. That's when it happens to him. And then you compound that, you add 20,000 years to that. 20,000 years of breakfast and dinners and lunches and showers and clothes and different seasons, and it all kinds of starts blurring together. So he assumes he's about 20,000 years old. He could be much older than that. We just simply don't know at this point in the story. So, all right, we've covered that. What is his age? We don't know. Another thing we get that's often related to his age is when was he born? Is he alive now theoretically? Is he, 25 in 2025, or is he 50? Is he my age? Is he older than I am? Is he younger than I am? And to be honest with you again, I've never really given a date or a time scale from, when the longevity starts, the triggering event for the universe itself, for this universe, I should say. I've never given it a date. I don't know if it happens 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, if it happens tomorrow or 10 years. But, rest assured, I would say if I had to put his birth date somewhere, I would say it's within the next 500 years of now. So, take that for what it is. Another thing is that we never get to know his real name. Like, he'll say that his name is Mordecai, but he will also in confidence, tell Imogen and some other people that's not his real name. And the simple truth is he doesn't remember his real name. He doesn't remember much of his first life or anything like that, or his early life. He's forgotten it. And, that's kind of understandable. If you spend, if you're 10, 20,000 years old and you have spent that life, changing your name, changing your identity, living in different places, being different people, doing different things, you might just forget who you are. So we never get to know his name. Now, if you came into my house and, anything, if you held a gun to my head and said, what is Mordecai's real name? I would tell you it's Bob. Is that true? I don't know. Bob is as good as any other name, is it not? No, maybe he's a Bob. So where is Bob from? Well, Bob is from anywhere you want him to be, really. He's from Earth, obviously. He is human. He's not an alien. He's not an evolved human. Not another species that evolved here on Earth or anything like that. He is human. He's I guess you could say he's a true thoroughbred human. He's 100%, mankind, and he's from Earth. Whereabout on Earth? I never really touch upon. When he does talk about that time in his life in the book, he kind of indicates that he might have been an American. He does say that he grew up in like a small town, but he doesn't really indicate where that was, or he doesn't give any identifying. It could be any small town in any country, anywhere in the world, more or less, for all we know. But I would say he's from small town Midwest America. If I had to pinpoint that with any accuracy. Now, I don't want to give an exact town. I don't want to be like he's Smallville, from Smallville, Kansas, or he's from St. Louis, or he's from Kansas City like I am. I don't want to say he's from Des Moines, Iowa. I don't want to say he's from Chicago, Illinois, or anything like that. Let's just say he's small town Midwest America. And that gives you at least a general area of the world from, which to think that Mordecai is from. So is he married? Does he have any kids? Well, in his first life, before he became an immortal, he was married. He was married twice. He had one kid. And, he goes on from there, and he has several different wives throughout the story. And all in all, he will tell Imogen at one point that he had over 100 kids. And that comes as a shock to her because, again, she's a normal mortal human. And so she's kind of shocked by that. She's got a time scale of maybe 80 years. And to her, having 100 kids is a bit extreme. And for most of us, I mean, could you imagine having 100 kids in your house? They're all under the age of 10 or 15 or something. Let's say they're all under the age of 20. Oh my, that would be those would be one ragged set of parents. I'll tell you that. But anyway, but again, you have to remember that in the past story, he lives for 7,000-8,000 years before the war begins, before everything gets nasty and things get turned upside down. So, 7 to 8,000 years, you spread over 100 kids over that, and that isn't that many. That's one every couple hundred years or so. or a couple every couple hundred years. And so, you take that time scale, you space them out every 100 years, every 70, 80 years. Having 100 kids doesn't sound like that many. Um, so as for his marriages, like I said, he was married twice when he was a mortal, and when he became immortal, he does marry one woman. The longest relationship, the woman that he's married to the longest, we never actually get to meet her in the story. He talks about her, but we never actually get to meet her, and that was 4,000 years. That was from the time that the exodus from Earth happened, and then they eventually left the solar system to settle out in one of the worlds that they had this colonies that's close by. And they spent 4,000 years together on that world, and they do have a numerous amount of children, 50, 60, 70, 80, 100. They might even be a vast majority of the 100 were born in that time period. I don't know. I just know he has 100 kids. And he, they do separate, and he he marries again, and he has, a couple kids with, each of his wives. And, or I know he's had other relationships, and maybe they're not all women. I've never really given it much thought, but I am open to, that kind of thing. Cause he does tell Imogen that, once you live as long as he does, that relationships and love and sex and all that takes on different meanings. And, I know a lot of people are sitting out there going, I don't think I'd ever get bored of that activity. Well, you never know. After 8,000 years, you just might. I mean, just, think about it. There's a comedian I remember hearing a long time ago. I don't remember who it was, but he had a joke about, marriage was like eating red M&Ms. And he goes, after 40 years of marriage, one day he just snapped, and you go, damn it, I want a red one. And I can imagine, that being like that. You married to somebody for 4,000 years. Oh my. Sounds tiring, doesn't it? No, it's, I think it will be different for every immortal that you talk to, every immortal, if there is ever immortality. I think it would be different for everybody, just like it is today. Some people are already bored with it and don't have any interest in it, and there's some people who are obsessed with it to a point. So I think it really boils down to what kind of person you want to be, or who you are, or whatever. And so, that will change based on people, as they go along. Now, another question that I often get, and I find it a weird one. Maybe it's my writing style, and maybe I don't express it well enough. But one thing I get is, are him and Imogen in a romantic relationship? No, they're not. Their relationship is that of son and is a daughter and father. And that's how Mordecai views it. He's actually, Imogen does develop feelings for him, because she doesn't necessarily at first see him as a father figure. That develops over a long period of time. But, early on in the story, when they first meet, she's in her 20s, and she is fascinated by this man that she meets, this 35-year-old looking man that seems to be able to die and come back without any issue. And so she does develop feelings towards him. And she does try to express those too. I mean, he just shoots her down. He's like, no, you're a child, you're an infant, because you have to remember, like I said, he's 20,000 years old. And in his society, growing up all these, developing and being part of that society for so long, they do look at people under a certain age. Even if they're a couple hundred years old, they might even still look at them as being infants. Like we would look at an infant child, something that needs protecting and, nourishing and time to grow and understand and learn and all that. And that's how he sees a lot of people, a lot of the immortals. He sees them as children, and children is even the wrong word. He sees them as infants. And that's how he kind of treats them too. He kid's glove. He pads the world around them, protects them from sharp edges, and takes away knives and scissors from them. And that's how, like I said, that's just how he views them. And that's how in a lot of ways, he views Imogen. So no, they're not. They will never be in a romantic relationship. And that generally comes to the next question: will he ever have a relationship in the story? Eventually, yes, but it's not with Imogen. And it's not with any mortal, not anybody that is, a couple, even newer, younger immortals, if they do become immortal, he doesn't necessarily engage with them in that manner because, he possibly just, he finds it disturbing or whatever it is. Like I said, he views them as children. So, you know, we don't necessarily date children in our society now, do we? And we wouldn't find it acceptable either. So the same with Mordecai. He sees it as unacceptable and he doesn't do it. And but like I said, that doesn't mean that he won't find another future love in the story. That is a possibility. I'm not going to tell you right off the bat, but it is possible, and it might be coming. You never know. So outside of that, those are some basic facts about Mordecai. So what does Mordecai believe in? What does he do? What's his job? What's his area of expertise? Mordecai's basic beliefs when it comes to the immortality is it's all breaks down to experiences. And as long as he could have a new experience, he's okay with living as long as it takes to have that experience and then some. So he doesn't necessarily have one job. Like he's not always been, say, a doctor or a lawyer or, a construction worker or a politician. He does a lot of things in the story. He will describe at times that he's done this, he's done that, or he has experience in it at least. He's been a farmer. He's been a construction worker. He's been a deep sea diver. He's been a freighter captain. He's been a military man. He's been a soldier. He's been an officer. He's been a captain of a ship, during the war. He's made important decisions. He's been middle management. He's owned businesses. He just does all kinds of stuff. And it's all to him a learning, not just a learning experience, but an experience within itself. So is he a smart man? Is he like a super genius? Man, not really. He's the way I always describe him, he's of average intelligence. He's not like he's not a Tesla, he's not a Da Vinci, he's not an Einstein. He's just an average person with an average intelligence. Now the technique, whatever it is that makes them live longer, does help with that stuff. Like it doesn't like increase them to, big brain status, but it also fixes a lot of problems. Like one of the problems with our intelligence would be like memory recall. Most people, it's very fuzzy, and that's what actually in the long run limits our intelligence, is our ability to recall information. And this process does help with, making it not near perfect, but a lot better than what we would have on average. Also, it solves like problems with like other mental illnesses or mental defects that we might experience as we age, or that we might be born with. Same with the physical ones. Like I said in the first video, I had a mastoid cavity disease. In Mordecai's world, I would have never been born with that. They would have found it and fixed it either before I was born or very young. And things like that. He's not crazy. He might be narcissistic. He might be arrogant. I mean, I don't consider necessarily those to be mental illnesses. I mean, some people might, but I don't really consider them to be it. And I could be wrong in that. They might be, and I might have to change that in the story. Maybe it is just schizophrenia and depression that it might solve, and it might leave arrogance and megalomania and all that alone because they don't, either, they're not considered actual mental defects, or they're caused by other things other than mental illness. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist, so I don't really know. Maybe maybe I'll read up on that a little bit, maybe to get my story straight in the near future. But anyway, I think that is really all you can know about Mordecai at this point without giving away too many spoilers. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and that when it comes time to getting to meet Mordecai for the first time in the first story, you have that passing familiarity with him, that you have a sense that you kind of know who he is, or you're aware of him, and that it enriches the story that is to come. So I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.